to BetRacingNation here on Sports Tonight Live. History will be made tomorrow with racing for the first time on a Good Friday, and I think we're making history this evening on the panel because Jeff Banks and Paul Struthers are sitting on the same, well, not on the same seats, but on the same panel this evening. First of all, good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Peter.
Thanks very much for joining us. I know it's been a very busy week. And Jeff, welcome back.
Thanks, Peter.
No one, you probably got lots of money from Newmarket this week, I guess.
Lots of money.
Lots of money.
I don't know. I'll have to buy a new mattress.
Absolutely. And our resident panellist, Billy Blakeman, good evening.
Evening, Peter.
We'll probably end up giving Jeff a lot of his money this week.
No, I don't give it to Jeff.
No, don't give it to Jeff. Maybe we should all give it to Jeff, I don't know. Let's get over quickly to Twitter Corner. Tom will just go through one or two things that we might be talking about over the next hour.
Yeah, welcome over to Twitter Corner. Get those tweets coming. We've had quite a lot already, actually. Generally, the main discussion this evening is going to be about Good Friday racing, which, as Peter says, goes away historically for the first time tomorrow. Just give a reflection of how the audience feel about this at the moment. Jamie Brownlow, he thinks it's a great idea on the all-weather. It's been needed. The all-weather's been needed of a shake-up for a long time now, and he thinks that this, along with Musselburgh, which has attracted some very exciting runners, he thinks is a cracking idea. And why not? Sam Sports Mad says that clearly jockeys and trainers and owners are all keen, otherwise we wouldn't have entries, and it's a great opportunity to get the family down to the track for Easter. Dermot tweets in saying there's no problem with Good Friday racing. I wanted to ask Jeff, what's he like for getting on with? Does he close accounts asked before non-runners? I don't know. He's asked something about what you're doing for Good Friday's racing, and there has been a few negatives come in, and mainly saying that bookies, quite frankly, don't care about the quality of racing that's on. So I'd quite like to pose that throughout the show to Jeff, whether he does care about the integrity and the quality of racing on the card at all. Back to you for that.
OK, does Jeff care about the punters? We'll find out in the next hour. First of all, obviously, Paul, you've come down to London tonight. Can we just define the role that you've got? Obviously, you're the CEO of the PJA, the Professional Jockeys Association. Just for people that are not sort of in tune with what you do, can you just enlighten us a little bit?
Yeah, so the PJA, it's a representative body for all the jockeys. We don't enforce membership, so there are some jockeys that ride in racing who aren't members, but we'd have about 425, 430 members. Around 97% of licensed jockeys are a member of the PJA. And we represent them across the board in racing, particularly a lot with the British Horse Racing Authority. And we also provide welfare support to them, so we offer various insurance schemes, whether that's career-ending insurance, legal insurance for when they need legal advice, in particular in relation to disciplinary proceedings at the BHA. Travel insurance, particularly for the fat jockeys who go riding overseas, their medical expenses would be covered, because obviously many overseas jurisdictions don't have a nationalised health service like we do over here. We have close ties with the Injured Jockeys Fund, who provide a lot of support to jockeys across the board. So
you formally are with the BHA, so the relationship there's good?
It's fine for the most part. There's always going to be a natural amount of friction, just because of their role and our role, and we don't always agree. But I've worked there for 11 years, so I've still got a lot of friends that work there, and we don't always see eye to eye, and we have some significant issues that are there. But the relationship's pretty positive.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, I just want to obviously get the viewpoint from the panel as well. Obviously, we've had one or two instances recently. We had the Gavin Sheehan and the Sam Twiston-Davis incident at Stratford. Did you pay out on both results?
No, I certainly did not. No, I pay out on the official result, of course. That was hilarious. I mean, that genuinely was hilarious. I mean, I've never in my career have I ever seen a jockey penalised for keeping straight. I mean, I wish that had happened in Dubai. I mean, I think we would have had a different situation in Dubai recently with. I can't remember. It escapes me the name of the jockey who was basically allowed the path of his the other runner through by you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Pat Cosgrave.
Pat Cosgrave. But of course at Stratford the jockey was doing everything he was supposed to do, which he was just keeping straight, and then the stewards bizarrely gave him a punishment, which was subsequently and sensibly overturned, as I understand it. But that was a unique situation, quite amusing.
Yeah, and Billy, from a punting point of view, how did you?
Yeah, I mean that sort of thing. It was crazy. I mean, it didn't look like the nicest run in, to be honest. But you know, it was clearly you wouldn't overturn that result. And if local stewards had taken that kind of decision, you know, it's a worry, frankly.
Is the case going to be, though, that Stratford will end up taking that fence away? Because obviously, ultimately, it comes down to the racecourse. I remember a few years ago at Cheltenham, the same thing happened, and I think they skipped a bank, and then they removed the bank that was there on a winner that won the cross country. Do you think Stratford will keep that fence?
Perhaps it's an argument for centralised stewards. Then you wouldn't have this. Yeah. You wouldn't have this. Apart from the fact it would be cheaper.
Would it go straight back? That the decision would go straight back and be centralised that day, or would it take a week?
We've got video. We have all the technology these days, and you've got a stipendiary be local who basically pull them into a room, and it can be discussed with a centralised panel of professional stewards who are not influenced by local factors, like, for example, you know, trainers and all the rest of it. They're just going to be a professional panel, and they will always apply a common theme, a common view, a trend. And there'll be clarity.
To be fair, a little bit of a slide dig from Jeff on the local stewards. They're not swayed by the local influences, such as who trains the horse.
But they're inconsistent, though, Paul.
But they are guided by the stipes. And there are 2 stipendiary stewards at almost all meetings. There are a few single stipe days. And whilst we were always almost worryingly confident that we would win the appeal, and you just thought we're missing something, there's an instruction in the rules of racing, I'm pretty sure it's instruction Schedule B6, that talks about overtaking on the inside. And whilst technically it was the outside of the course because of the layout of the course, it's quite clear. If you're going to undertake someone effectively, you have to have the speed to get into the gap. And actually the instruction says you've got to get through and ahead. Now in practice that's not actually applied that way. And Gavin had jumped the last fence at length and a half, 2 lengths in front of Sam. And Sam, what you could tell from the video, Sam was going to go to his outside, but Gavin's horse jumped left, Sam's gone inside, and our view was always the stewards have just completely
and what's it like at
got that wrong.
At these hearings? Are they sort of fair lads and go, oh, we're just...
Well, Sam's a cracking guy, so when I was slightly uncomfortable because it's one jockey against another almost, and we would never appeal a placings result. That's up to owners and trainers. But because we were appealing the 4 days for Gavin, which we thought was entirely unjust because he hadn't done anything wrong, he'd kept a straight line, as the rule says he's entitled to. I'd had conversations with Sam. I said, look, Sam, it's a tricky one, but if you got 4 days and it was the other way around, we'd be doing exactly the same. And he was an absolute gent about it. And
some others wouldn't have been. But from a consumer point of view, though, Billy, talk about the inconsistency
this sort of thing is terrible for the punter. This sort of thing, you need confidence that in a situation like that, the stewards are going to take a decision, you know, a decision that is the same, where whichever race, looking at the case there, it was quite clearly that you wouldn't overturn the result. And the point about centralised stewarding, you see us with Premiership football matches, you know, the referee's got to make a decision. Within seconds, you're seeing every possible angle on video, and, you know, a team of pundits can see what actually happened. And there's no argument for not, in this situation, having a centralised, with technology today, having a proper look at it and making the right decision.
How would the punters have viewed it had Gavin moved his horse across and permitted Sam Twiston-Davies through the gap?
Yeah.
They would have screamed the place down. They'd been absolutely right. They would have unfairly casted aspersions on Gavin, which would have been completely untrue and unfounded. But it would have looked bad. It would have been wrong for him to have moved out the way, to have permitted Twiston-Davies a clearer run. Absolutely wrong.
I mean, that was the other point, that even we felt they'd wrongly given Gavin any days at all. We didn't think he was guilty of any riding offence. But even then, to amend the result, they were 6 strides before the line, and while Sam was closing quickly, he was still half a length down. It's a big leap of faith, particularly given that stewards are very loath to amend results in this country.
Because I remember a time when the results were changed quite a lot. Do you think now there's more pressure on changing results in general?
Not at all. The statistics are tiny in terms of like the number of results changed. But I mean, Paul's point is absolutely correct. It was down a half a length when it was beat. And here we had the Gold Cup, for example, which was a short head. I believe it was a short head. And there is an argument, whatever. But I think the stewards on the day were right at Cheltenham. And most of the time I do believe they do get it right. There's very few times that you sort of say, no, that looked completely wrong and all the rest of it. It's a rarity that you feel that they get that.
And I'll have to say, I don't work there anymore, so it's not my job to defend them. The stewards are pretty bloody good, in being fair. Since January 2013, we've only appealed 12 decisions. We've won in full or in part 10 of those, which it should have won the other 2, to be honest. But I would say that that's slightly influenced by the fact that if you lose an appeal, they're likely to keep your deposit from you these days, when historically they only did that for frivolous appeals.
Yeah.
And also going to London often means missed rides for jockeys, so you're having
Is
to
there
weigh
a chance,
everything up.
before we move over to Tom, and we're going to go on to Good Friday very soon, is there a chance that jockey could actually have an increased penalty, presumably, as well? You have to be absolutely sure.
If you appeal a racecourse decision, the appeal hearing is actually a rehearing. So it's almost a totally new inquiry. So you can have punishments increase. And theoretically, in the one involving Sam and Gavin, had they found Sam guilty of careless riding, which they wouldn't have been able to, because the BHA's position, which was disappointing and surprising, was that the stewards got it right on the day. We said to them, don't offer, there's no need for you to offer any evidence, because it's such a palpably wrong decision. But they did. But theoretically, Sam could have been found guilty of careless riding at a rehearing, although that would have been quite strange, bearing in mind he was the BHA's witness. But even if he was, he only caused interference to his own horse anyway, so he'd have been fine. OK, well, we're going to get on to the nitty-gritty of Good Friday racing, and history will be made tomorrow. But let's go over to Tom in Twitter Corner, see if any comments surrounding our subjects tonight. Yeah, certainly. If you've got any views on recent stewarding events that have taken place and you'd like to get those heard out across the panel, please do tweet those in. Certainly it seems as though some technology has moved on since the days of Lester Piggott nicking other jockeys' whips and the like. Certainly moved on from that. But the big debate really on Twitter is raging around Good Friday. James Diaz, he says that there's 2 really poor cards at Lingfield and Musselburgh. Why do we even bother? Somebody says, I can't really say the name, it's Betting Shop Bankers we'll use for this scenario, says might as well, it's on every other day, hashtag Christmas next. Stephen Turtle said no better quality racing but spread over Saturday and Sunday. More group races should be held on Sunday to attract families. Stop spreading the quality of racing and condense it down maybe onto a new feature on a Sunday. See what the panel have to think about that after a short break, I'm sure, Peter. Absolutely, and it's catching the people's imagination, said Kate Hill, spokesman for Lingfield Owners Arena Racing. Is it catching your imagination? Before we take a very short break, you seem really excited about it, Jeff. I am not. Well, I'm excited about the prospect of me personally making money, but as an individual, as a racing fan, I think the whole decision is wrong. OK, well, we're going to talk about that more. We're going to take a very short break. Be back after this